This is a clip from Basketball at the Bar Live.
It's getting ridiculous.
It's getting ridiculous, man. All right, let's talk about the Atlanta Hawks. They went fishing, or they are going fishing after losing to the Miami Heat yesterday. They only won one game in the series. Pretty disappointing for Atlanta fans with a lot of high hopes. They did so well last season. But it is an excellent Miami team that they were playing with an excellent defense. Trae Young did not look like himself at all in this series.
What's up, Mike?
What are your thoughts, Calvin, on Atlanta? How can they improve this offseason? And are there any positives that they can take from this series or this season moving on?
Ooh, that's tough. I mean, I think the positive you take from this season is they were, one of the more disappointing regular season teams for pretty much the entire year, coming off of an Eastern Conference Finals run last year. It looked like for a while they might not even make the play-in tournament this season. They found a way to sneak themselves in, not just to the play-in tournament, but to the regular tournament as well. I don't know how much of a consolation that's going to be, though. This team needs to make some changes, I think, in the offseason. It's a combination of them their roster not being where it needs to be, and they just ran into the one team that was probably one of the worst matchups for them.
And some health concerns.
Oh,
too,
yeah.
right?
They've had injuries, just like everybody has had injuries this year. Real quick, Barry, how'd your picks turn out yesterday?
Not so good.
I went a perfect 3 for 3 yesterday.
I don't want to talk about it.
I also told you guys, be wary of betting the spreads in these games. Phoenix did cover, but the other two did not. The other two winning teams did not. So, again, it's not financial advice, but if you'd like to tip your bartender, we gladly will accept it. But as far as what it goes in, or what Atlanta needs to do in the offseason, it's a combination of a few things. Number one, Trae Young's just got to be better, right? Yes, Miami's defense was great against him, but if you're a great player, you've got to show up in these games. I mean, the numbers are pretty staggering when you look at Trae Young. He had the same number of turnovers as assists. Atlanta was one of the best teams all year long in turnover differential and in per game turnovers. But his points per game decreased from 28 in the regular season to just 15 in the postseason. That's like the fourth largest decrease from regular season to postseason in NBA history. So he's got to be better. They've got to be healthy as well. Deandre Hunter had a huge game last night.
Huge game.
He missed a lot of time this year. But I also think they need to tweak this roster. They've got a lot of the same player on this team in my mind, a lot of wing shooters that don't really play a lot of defense, not named DeAndre Hunter. I love his game, two-way game. But and I think it's time for them to move on from John Collins. They need to shake this team up a little bit.
Wow, that's a bold move there. Yeah, for me, this team is young. They need time to grow, develop. I think Trae Young's going to continue to get better. I do think they need to get some clarity on the John Collins situation. They have him locked up for the next 4 years, so they are in control. But he's a young guy. He's got a lot of talent. If he's not playing up to his best, or maybe he doesn't want to be here, maybe he won't play up to that, that could greatly impact this team. So I think they need to get some clarity on John Collins. They need to figure out whether you're here or you're not. If you're not here, what we can do to move on from you and bring in some talent to help this team. They need to decide what's going on with Danilo Gallinari. He has 1 year left. It is only partially guaranteed, so they could potentially waive him next season if they did want to. He's a little bit older now. He's 33. He's dealt with a ton of injuries in his career. I'm a big Gallinari fan, but you know what they say, the best ability is availability. So if you're going to be competing year in and year out for championships, trying to move past that first round, deep into the playoffs, you need to have guys that are going to be available for your team. I'm not sure if Danilo is that guy, but we will see. They still got Bogdan Bogdanovic for 2 more seasons. I like what I've seen out of him. He's had some great games this year. I definitely think they need to bring him back. I think Clint Capella is the answer at the center position for him. Unfortunately, as we mentioned, they did deal with some injury concerns going into the playoffs. Clint Capella is absolutely huge for them, and I love the combination of him and Trae Young. But he's got to stay out there on the court.
Yeah, of course, health is always a key factor.
Yeah, DeLon Wright, he's an expiring contract. What's going to happen with him? You mentioned DeAndre Hunter. had an amazing game last night, end up fouling out in that game, which was unfortunate because he really had the hot hand. He was the only one making buckets for Atlanta.
Literally the only guy.
At that point. And then, Kevin Knox, what's going to happen with him? Lou Williams, he's probably going to retire.
Jalen Johnson is another name to keep in mind. He has a lot of upside, very, very young. Didn't really see a lot of action with Atlanta this season.
Is Kevin Huerter going to continue to grow? They still have him locked up for another 4 years. I think on a reasonable contract. He's 23. He's making $14 million next year. I'd like to see him improve his defense and be available. Maybe he will be, the lock-in starter for them at that two-guard position. But they have a lot of young players on this team with a lot of potential. I think they just need to pick a plan and go with it.
Yeah, I think they need to look out in, this offseason into free agency or trade or whatever for some better two-way players. There's one guy that I have in mind who it would be a bit of a risk depending on how much money you have to pay this guy, but Victor Oladipo is a name to keep in mind.
Yes.
I think
they got a first-hand look at him.
Yeah, I think he would fit really well on this team. Mm-hmm. He's not, the best or not as good of a shooter as a lot of other players on this Hawks team, but that's okay. They need more of a two-way threat, and I think he would be a nice fit next to Trae Young in the backcourt.
Yeah, Robert Covington's another guy.
High risk, high reward, but
I think Robert Covington could be huge on this team. If I'm Atlanta, I'm looking down to LA at the Clippers, and I'm saying I love what the Clippers did this season as far as having these two-way guys that can shoot well and defend. I need to bring a little bit more of those guys to Atlanta if I want to make it further. But bright future ahead for the Hawks. This is one small setback for them. I think it might light a fire under a guy like Trae Young, and I expect them to come out and have an amazing season next year. Yeah,
they're still a very young group, when you look at the core group of players they have on this team. So they're definitely not they're not just going to fade to black here, I think. But they need to make some changes to this roster. Thank you so much for watching. As always, please don't forget to like this video and hit that subscribe button. You can join us live every single weekday, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And also, don't forget to tip your bartender.